Now we'll turn the presentation over to today's shot coach, Brandon Ibach. Brandon?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so Arbortext Command Language is the scripting language that's built into Arbortext Editor and some of the other products. We're going to be focusing just on its use inside of Editor today. ACL has been around for a long time, pretty much as long as Editor has existed. It is the main tool for automation within Editor, and actually a lot of the functionality of Arbortext Editor is actually built with ACL. There's some pretty large libraries of code that implement a lot of the basic functionality of the editor on top of a central core that's written in another language. There are several different options as far as choices of programming languages for doing customizations in Editor, but even if you're doing Java or JavaScript, which are a couple of other choices besides ACL, even if you're using those languages, you'll find that you're going to end up using ACL for certain things. There's certain functions that are just a little bit easier to work with in ACL, or that you kind of have to use ACL for. So it's a good technology to be familiar with if you're doing any kind of customization or automation work. The language is strongly influenced by Perl, and the syntax is fairly similar. Or if you're familiar with JavaScript or pretty much any other language whose syntax is based on the C language, you'll be pretty familiar with the syntax of ACL. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my screen up here. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, Liz, can you see the Arbortext Editor window here?
We can see you.
Okay, excellent. Computers works. All right, good deal. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a simple document to kind of use to demonstrate a few things here. I'm just going to go to the new window here and select Arbortext XML docbook, which is one of the document types that's distributed with Editor. And just create a simple document here, a book, a chapter inside of that, and create a section. And create a small table here. Okay, so the first thing that you probably going to want to be familiar with when it comes to working with ACL is the command line, which is this area down at the bottom of the screen here. And that allows you to type ACL commands and functions and expressions in and get, basically work with it in an immediate fashion, get the results back right away. If you don't have this, sometimes Editor might be set up not to display the command line. You can go to the Tools menu and select Preferences down at the bottom. And the Preferences window should come up on the Window category here. And you can just make sure that the command line option is checked in order to display the command line. You can get to the command line by just clicking down here to place the cursor there. Or I know when I'm using the command line and developing some things, I like to be able to switch back and forth quickly. And I'm a keyboard person. I don't really like having to use the mouse to move around. So you can also use F6 to switch between panes. So you see here, I've just moved the cursor from the main edit window over into the document map by pressing F6. And if I press it again, it'll go down to the command line. And then one more time, I'll be back here. So it just cycles through the available panes. So F6 is a quick and easy way to jump back and forth. The command window also has a history feature that lets you recall previous commands, and I'll show that in just a moment. So the first thing that we want to be familiar with as part of the ACL language itself is variables. And when you're using the command line, you generally want to prefix variables with a $sign to indicate that the name is that you're going to type is a variable. So for an example here, I'll create a variable called color, and I'm going to create it just by assigning something to it right now. So I'm going to set color equal to, I'm going to use a function called option, which lets me look up the value of an option within the Arbortext environment, and Arbortext has a whole range of options for controlling different things about how editor works and configuring it. In this case, I'm going to look up the text or generated text font color. I'm going to store the value of that into my color variable. And now I can use the eval command, which lets me evaluate an expression and display the results. So I'm going to evaluate the color variable, and that pops up in this eval output window and shows me that that color variable currently stores the value of blue, and that that value is what color Arbortext uses to display the generated text, like the numbers that are automatically generated by the style sheet here.
So we have a question.
Yes.
How do I make sure, I don't see preferences. Preferences don't show up, so how do I make that happen?
Preferences don't show up at the preferences window?
Yeah, I think it's a question about full menus.
Oh, preferences should be available whether full menus are on or not. It's under the tools menu here. Should be the last option on the menu.
Okay. And can you just, real quick, can you show full menu so that people can turn everything on?
Yeah, I've got full menus on right now. That's also in the preferences. That's the full menus choice right here. If I were to turn this off, you can see that my tools menu is a bit shorter now because it's removed some of those options.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, turn full menus back on, and again, command line is the option you want to make sure is checked in order to have the command line available. Okay, so we got our the value of our gentext font color option. We stored it into the color variable. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the set command. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and use that history feature I was talking about. If I press the up arrow on the keyboard, it will recall my previous command, and I can do that again to move back to further in history. I can cycle through all of the commands I've typed within this session. So I'm going to go ahead and use that to just quickly edit my previous thing here, so I don't have to retype that whole option name again. So I'm now going to set gentext font color equal to red. And now you can see that Arbortext has updated the display to make all of the generated text, things that I haven't actually typed into the document, display in red. And since we stored the previous value into our color variable, we can now use that to restore things the way they were. Say I wanted to just temporarily change the color to red so I can help me find the generated text, but I want to go ahead and put it back the way it was. I can type that same command again, set gentext font color, and specify my variable, $color, and that'll restore it back to the way it was. All right. So eval allows me to examine the contents of variables and execute various functions. Set allows me to change options. Probably the next most useful command is the help command. And if you spent any time on the adapters mailing list, you'll notice people referencing help and then some number. And what those are is those are basically indexes into the help system. And what you can do is you can go to the command line, type help, and whatever number they give you. In this case, I'm going to say help 9000, and hit enter, and it will take me immediately to a particular topic in the help system. Bring the window over here. This is the Arbortext Help Center, which is where all the product documentation is located. Give it just a minute here to load everything up. And this has taken me to the topic that describes the alias command, which I will demonstrate in just a moment here. So what alias allows me to do is actually create new commands to perform various functions. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll go ahead and put some content into my table here. And I'm going to use the alias command, and I'm going to create a new command called bold it that will allow me to turn text bold. There's a couple other ways to do this in the interface, so this isn't going to be the most useful command, but it gives you a good example of what you can do. And so I type alias, I take the name of the command that I want to create, and then I use a pair of curly braces to hold the command that I want to execute when I type bold it. In this case, I'm going to use a command called insert tag, which allows me to insert a new tag into my document. In this case, I'm going to insert a tag called emphasis. Now, if I go back to my editor window here, I'll highlight some text and type bold it. And I've gone ahead and inserted that that tag. In this case, actually, emphasis is turning things italic. To add an extra attribute to get DocBook to turn it bold for us.
Excellent. We have another question. How
Yes.
do you find the help number?
Good question. The help number, if you're in the help system, you can right-click inside of a topic and go to Properties. And you can see in the address here, it'll be embedded somewhere inside here. There'll be a number, generally 4 or 5 digits. It's not terribly obvious, but that's where you need to look, and you'll see it listed somewhere inside of that address string. So in this case, 9000 was the number that I typed. But yeah, so certainly one of the main sources will be posted on the adapters list. If somebody is located a particular help topic that's relevant to a question, they'll usually look up that number and then provide that as part of their answer.
Excellent. Thank
Right.
you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we demonstrated using the alias command to create new commands. A similar command is the map command. This is something that can help you automate things for users a little bit. This is how you set up new keyboard shortcuts. So in this case, I'm going to create a shortcut. I'm going to use Control-Alt-S. And when I press Control-Alt-S, I want to use the change tag command to change an existing tag to a different one. And I'm going to have it change the current tag to the superscript tag instead. And now if I go ahead and switch back up to the editor window here and hit Control-Alt-S, you can see that I've now switched from the emphasis to superscript tag, and you can see the text got a little bit smaller there and shifted position just a little bit. All right, so that kind of gives a brief overview of functions. There are many, many more functions to perform different tasks inside the editor, but I just wanted to kind of cover a few basic ones. So the next thing I want to talk about is functions, and this is where you can start to really kind of build up a more complicated functions or complicated machinery using ACL to do more elaborate tasks. So the first thing I want to talk about as far as functions is the idea of what Arbortext calls object identifiers. And object identifiers, or OIDs, are basically just a way to reference an item within your document. So, for instance, pretty much every tag is an object and has an object identifier. So, title, chapter, section, and so on. And these object IDs in and of themselves, we'll actually give an example here. We'll use the eval command and the OID caret function, which will give me the object identifier of the current object, which is the object that my cursor or caret is inside of right now, which in this case is going to be the superscript element. And you can see what one of these object IDs looks like. It's a little structure with a few numbers inside of it. There's no real meaning directly here. This is just an arbitrary number that Arbortext assigned to this tag when it parsed it. And if I close this document and load it up again, it'll get a different number the next time around. But as long as I keep it open within this session, I can use this identifier to refer to that tag specifically. But where these become much more useful is that you can use these as an argument to another function to get information about that object. So in this case, we'll use the OID name function and give an argument of the object identifier that we're currently on, and it will tell us that the name of that tag is superscript. And of course, again, there's a whole range of OID functions that can give us various information about that tag, the attributes that are on it, other tags that it's related to, like the tag that it's inside of, and the next tag over from it, and so on. A couple of other functions that are useful, and that we'll see in just a minute here when we put together a more complicated example, is the OID valid function, which will tell me whether or not an OID value is a valid OID within this document, which obviously the OID caret will always give us a valid object identifier to work with. And OID null is occasionally useful, which will give you a guaranteed invalid object identifier, one that doesn't correspond to anything in your document that you can kind of use as a empty value. Might occasionally be useful in programming. The other thing I want to quickly describe is document identifiers, which are similar to object identifiers, that just are a way of referring to the document that you're working with. Especially if you have multiple documents open, you might want to have some scripts that move data between a couple of documents or something like that. So we can get the identifier of the current document that we're working with. In this case, 33 is the identifier. Again, it's just an arbitrary number that Arbortext assigned to this document when we opened it. We can also get the document identifier of a particular object identifier. So in this case, we can find out the document that corresponds to the tag that we're in right now, which again, in this case, it's the same value, so our current document. And we can also get the object identifier of the first object inside of a particular document. So that gives us a way to kind of start at the beginning of a document if we wanted to, say, walk through the document. In this case, if this particular value is the first item in this document, which if we use the name function, we'll see is the book element here at the top of our document. So let's put some of these things together and actually build a function that we can run in our document here.
Before you do, we have another question.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Is there a list of ACL commands like eval, set, etc. somewhere that we can access?
Yes. In the Help Center here, there are a few areas that have relevant information. The programming topic at the top level contains most of this information. The Customizer's Guide is a good starting point to learn about all of the various programming facilities, including ACL, Java, JavaScript, and so on. The Programmer's Reference has additional reference information about those various choices. And then the Arbortext Command Language reference is the one that really has the bulk of the information about ACL specifically. And, whoops, just expand this a little bit. The first couple of topics here have just kind of basic introductory information about using the language, and then the functions topic has a list of all of the functions, and commands has a list of all the commands here. The alias is the one that we were looking at. You can see it's a fairly extensive list of commands here, and the functions as well. All right.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay, so I've created a file here. It's empty right now, and this is located in under my Documents directory here. I've created a folder called Arbortext, and inside of that a folder called Custom, and I've set this up as my custom directory using the APT custom environment variable. If you want to find out more about how custom directories work, actually last week's our previous episode with Ed Benton described a little bit about how those work. It's a good way to set up any customizations that you're going to be using. And inside of there I've got a folder called Scripts, and any ACL files that I create in here will be very easily accessible to me to load up, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment when we finish putting together our script. So this file is just called ACL test.acl. And in here, I'm going to start by using a command called package. What package lets you do is set up a particular container for variables and functions that you create. And this helps to avoid having any conflicts with using the same name for your function as some built-in function or some function in some other customization that you might be using. So I'm going to call this ACL test, same as the name of the file here, and that way I know that I won't have any conflicts with what I'm creating here. And next I'm going to use the function keyword to create a function, and I'm going to call my function titles. And in this case I'm using an empty set of parentheses to indicate that this function doesn't take any arguments. I don't have to pass anything to it. It'll just use the information it has available to it. I'll create a set of curly braces to contain the body of my function. And the first thing I'm going to do is use the local keyword to create a couple of variables that will be local to this function. They won't affect anything else outside of it. They'll be created when this function starts. I'll use them, and then they'll be discarded when the function is complete. So I'm going to create a variable called n. And notice I didn't put a $ in front of n. Inside of functions, as long as you aren't typing things immediately on the command line, the $ is optional. So in this case, I think it's a little bit cleaner just to skip it. And so I'm going to create a variable called n and another one called o. And o is going to contain an object identifier, and I'm going to use that as I walk through the document here. So I'm going to initialize o with the OID first function that we looked at earlier. And I'm going to start with the first object in the current document, which should be our book element here. And then I'm going to create a loop using the while construct. And basically, while I have a valid OID in the variable O, as long as that continues to be true, I will check to see if the name of the object in my variable O is equal to title. Basically, I'm going to perform some actions just on elements called title in my document. And if that is true, I will set n equal to the name of the parent of this object. And then I will use a function called response. And what response does is creates a message dialog that will pop up and display some information to the user. In this case, I'm going to give them the name of the parent element, and then I'm going to concatenate or add to that using the dot operator, a colon in this case, and then the content of this object. And then following that, I'm going to set O equal to basically the next object in the document. OID4 will move from the current object that I'm on to whatever object comes next. And basically, if you can imagine walking through the document, whatever the next start tag in my document is what OID4 will return to me. All right. I'm going to go ahead and save that file. And then back up my command line, I'm going to use the source command to read in ACL test. And because I saved this in my scripts directory, Arbortext will automatically know how to find it in there, and I don't need to give the .acl extension because it will automatically look for a file with this name and .acl on the end. And now I can go ahead and execute my ACL test, and this is the name of the package that we specified and the name of the function. And tell Arbortext to go ahead and run that. And here's one of the response dialogues. In this case, it started walking through the document, found the title, and so it's telling me that the book has a title of My Book. The chapter has the title of My Chapter. And section, and the table. So with a just a short little function there, I've created something that can walk through and do something with each title within my document. In this case, I just displayed them, but obviously you could do something like doing some replacement of words or setting an attribute on each of those elements or anything along those lines. And I think that's about all I wanted to cover. Are there any additional questions? Liz?
Not so far. Wait, here we got one. Can you call ACL commands from JavaScript?
Yes. Yeah, there's a kind of global object that's made available to all JavaScript scripts running inside of the editor environment. And if I remember right, there's a method on that object that allows you to evaluate ACL expressions and call ACL commands and so forth. And similarly with Java, there's an interface provided in the Java environment to access editor functions, and that includes a method to call ACL functions.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So while then everyone is typing in any other last remaining questions, we're kind of at the end. I will bring it back over and show the references slide again. That's good. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Once again, here's where you can learn how. Remember, you can use the Help Center in your install disk, or you can go to the web and you can get the reference documents right there on the website. The manuals to know, Customizer's Guide, Programmer's Reference, the ACL Command Reference Guide, And the content pipeline guide can help also when you start working with Publishing Engine or APP or style sheets or the content pipeline. And there's another manual that also shows Arbortext SSL support, and I'll just throw that in there kind of to round it out. And before we go, one more time, here's the list of resources for Arbortext users. There are many of them, and if you want to get to them, you can just go to that URL at the bottom of the page, and then you can click to all of them rather than have to write them all down. There's many, many things going on. I think in a week is the APP World event in London in the UK, coming up either next week or the week after. I can't remember which exactly, but it's very soon now, and so if you're out there and you do style, that's the place to be. And in June, coming up real quick, is the Arbortext PTC World event. So everything is represented there here in Las Vegas in June. I've just reminded that APP World is next Monday, so be there or be square. Thanks again, and we'll see you all again at the next Monster Garage, which is next week. We'll be doing basic authoring automation. Very exciting topic. We've got Lynn Hales back with us next week. All right, thanks again, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.